I think Australians expect from their Prime Minister an honourable approach to the way in which the Prime Minister engages with the Australian public, somebody who is straightforward, honest with them. People voted in their millions for the Labor Party believing that they were going to get tax cuts to help them with their cost of living pressures, and as it turns out, that is not the case. The Prime Minister has knowingly and willingly lied to the Australian people, and I don't think the Australian people will easily forget or forgive. The Prime Minister today was misleading in his press club presentation. It turns out that, and this was not mentioned in his speech, that over the course of the next 10 years, the government will actually increase their tax take by $28 billion because of bracket creep. And everybody knows that as you work harder, you work longer, the longer you're in the workforce, the older you get, promotions at work, etc. As you work your way up through the income levels, you are paying more and more, and the tax department is collecting more and more because of bracket creep. And the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 tax policies were designed to help millions of Australians. We know that over the course of the next few years, it won't be 1.8 million people who are affected adversely by the Prime Minister's change. It will be something like 4 million Australians. And those aspirational young Australians, people who are working hard now for their retirement, to provide support to their kids, their families who are going to be hit hardest by the Albanese government's lie. And I think at the moment the Australian Prime Minister owes an apology to the Australian public, but he hasn't given it. Now, the other point that's worth making, I think, is that the Prime Minister had 18 months to try and put in place changes within the tax system or support around energy payments, etc., etc. He didn't do that, as I say, because he was distracted for 12 months by The Voice and the waste of $450 million. But he's also taken decisions which I think make it harder for Australians, and I think the Prime Minister owns all of those decisions now. We also know that the Dunkley by-election is on March 2. Now, people couldn't work out why there was a delay in announcing the date for the Dunkley by-election, but it was obviously done so that the Prime Minister could get a couple of sitting weeks in before people go to the polls in Dunkley on March the 2nd. I think the Prime Minister's looked at the polling, as I have, in relation to Dunkley, and I think he's quite shocked by what he's found. Let's call it and be honest about the Prime Minister's motivations here. His motivation's not to help people with cost of living pressures. He's had 18 months to do that. His motivation here is to shore up his own position and his own leadership. Because as we saw with Julia Gillard, when people look the Australian people in the eye and lie to them as a Prime Minister, people don't forget or forgive that. And how could you trust anything this Prime Minister says as a result? So I think he's looked at the polling for Dunkley. I think he's recognised that there are people on lower and middle incomes in Dunkley, and that this model, that his change that he's proposed today, is front and centre to trying to win political opportunity for the Labor Party in Dunkley. That's what it's about. And these changes, as they're proposed, don't come in until the 1st of July. The Prime Minister's got 5-6 months for the legislation to be passed. But instead, he wants to ram this bill through the Parliament before March 2, the Dunkley by-election, because he wants to try and wedge the coalition. That's his motivation. He's been in Parliament 26 years. He is a smart political operator, but he's now also a liar. And the Australian public know that he's not motivated to help them, he's motivated to help himself.